This is Import Export with Lawrence Christophels.
Welcome back to Import Export here on Ticker TV. I'm Lawrence Christophels. From the outset, we talked about this show being so important to prepare companies to leverage solutions, IT solutions, but also do that safely and securely so they're not exposed to greater risk with cyber threat and data breaches. With that in mind, we've heard from Manish this morning from Import Stocks, Steve Kelly from Starboard IT, and now we're going across the country to WA to Dr. Ian Martinus. Hi Ian, how are you?
Yeah, fine, thanks. Really good.
Thanks for joining us early in the morning over there, mate. Look, I love the report that was released, and I know our good friend Daryl Daisy was involved with that as well to help you with that. But I'm not going to steal your thunder. Can you tell us a little bit about the report? I've got it in front of me, and we'll make it available to the viewers as well. But it's a really timely, powerful report, and it really highlights how important this topic is.
Thanks for having me. I'm part of the West Australian AUSTCYBER Innovation Hub, which is part of the National Industry Growth Centre network with AUSTCYBER around Australia. There's a whole bunch of us around Australia doing similar things, working with corporate, small business, industry, students, etc., etc. So a lot of the stuff, as you know, and the guests before me were speaking about, was about the impact on business and the way that we remotely work and the way that we export and the types of things we'll be thinking about post-COVID. So a lot of the time we focus on the jobs and growth agenda, and then the emerging industries clearly around Australia and the world are in cybersecurity and digital technology. So I guess the thing I wanted to do with a little bit of a background in this was look at, instead of trying to figure out how many startups we're talking to and how many direct jobs we're creating, which is really hard to get your head around, went back to the old modelling days and try to figure out, okay, so if we're pumping a certain amount of money of stimulus into consumer goods, for example, and we're giving concessions to small business to buy capital goods, whether it's a new computer or a new truck or a new whatever machine at their business, what would be the impact, the economic multiplier of that versus, for example, putting money into reconstruction projects of roads and ports and the big capital works program. So I just created a model that said, what would cybersecurity or investment in cybersecurity look like against those impact opportunities? Yeah. And what I found, again, ingested a lot of reports from around the world and Australia. For example, the Norton Small Business Report, that's global, cybersecurity survey of 2017, FBI report on cybercrime, 2018, and then a few obviously key cyber reports and Australian reports on productivity and digital transformation. So anyway, in this spreadsheet, typical modelling analysis, I took the low side, the absolute bare bones minimum of, and I assumed that 1 in 8 businesses get attacked, so 12% of businesses, but again, it could be up to 60%. Yeah. And what is startling, I guess, is also when you model against the cost to a small business of an attack, and this is one-time incident or repetition and multiple incidents, again, with those cyber insurance reports, et cetera, you hear numbers of 12,000, 15,000, 60,000. So anyway, I took a base case of $7,000 per business, only, again, 12% being attacked, and modelled that against, the gross state product, especially in the first instance in Western Australia, but easily extrapolated with those hard numbers to all of the supply chain of small businesses dealing with each other or bigger businesses around Australia. So anyway, what I found, and I guess this would bore a lot of people and it excites modelers and economists, but really just to show that the impact of us using stimulus money to buy electronic goods, for example, a new phone, especially like my daughter who wants the new iPhone 10 something, and it's around $2,000. Yeah. So again, that sort of thing, you buy a consumer good, you get an impact of about $1.50 uplift for the Australian economy, which, as you know, flows into the pockets of people remotely working, might have their own business, might be any part of the supply chain. So that's for consumer goods, something hard like furniture or a bed or a mattress or a TV, whatever. Yep. And then from some previous work I'd done in the past, looking at direct induced and indirect jobs when you spend hundreds of millions of dollars and you do port infrastructure, or you build a marina, or you do some new road work. And that showed, and this is kind of global standards as well being ingested, about $2.40 or $2.50 of impact or outcome. If you invest $1 million, so this is $1 million invested in consumer goods, $1 million invested in marinas and all the rest of it. If you invest $1 million in cybersecurity protection for small business and the Australian supply chain, as I said about the model, absolute bare minimum assumptions pushed out about $4.70 to $5. So for every dollar that government or somebody would kind of invest, up to 5x return.
That's what I read that, and I was just staggered by the statistics. So, a $4.50 return from $1 million investment in cybersecurity into that. Is that national or WA as a figure?
It would be national, I guess, because apples for apples in Australia, you could push this around Australia, and if you did every state and territory, and this $1 million would also be giving 5,000 businesses protection of the essential 8, cybersecurity practices, and as your previous speaker said about hygiene, they would be fortified against attack if they just deploy, even 2 or 3 of the essential 8.
That's crazy. It's just that so much. I mean, again, the statistics just don't lie. But I think when I read your report as well, Ian, it's really interesting that, as you say, governments can invest $1 million into a port, into a marina, or they can do it into a physical infrastructure project that they can touch and feel. But if they're investing $1 million into cybersecurity, they don't get I think you said the ribbon cutting effect of saying that they can hang their hat on a project. It's almost invisible, so out of sight, out of mind, so to speak.
And the great thing is, if we're talking about jobs and growth, this is the best way, in my view, to deploy second and third year students in work integrated learning with small business. So they're already, computer science, cybersecurity students. And as we know, over the 300 to 400 cybersecurity companies in the Australian ecosystem, they would start employing Australian nationals. If we're talking about sovereign capability and kind of securing our supply chain when we try to export, well then, as you know very well, if you're securing something at the base in Australia, then it flows on for the securitization of what you're selling, whether it's biodynamic beef, or you're selling a server overseas, or you're just selling a professional service, whatever it is, that Australia has figured out its own kind of backyard.
Yeah, and look, we've got the clean and green reputation from a food produce point of view. If we could have that same reputation that we evolve and develop from an IT and data security perspective, that would really stand us in strong stead across other global markets, competing for that type of technology and trust factor in their platforms.
Well, as you know yourself, the COVID Safe app, if it's housed in an AWS server that could have been housed in a kind of a secure operations center in Australia somewhere, that's Australian jobs. And again, Cisco, whether it's Cisco, Huawei, Intel, Norton, name your product and service, but that's the global supply chain of kind of cybersecurity and information security services that have been exported around the world. And they have a stranglehold, kind of around the world. Australian companies have brilliant tech, brilliant people. We could do the same.
I was going to ask you that. Why would Amazon be the people that we trust our COVID Safe app for? Don't we have anything that's just as good in Australia? It doesn't sound like we do.
I probably shouldn't have gone down that rabbit hole, but all I'd say is that we work with the Five Eyes very carefully around Australia. And again, the Australian kind of ecosystem, you play with your friends carefully, and you kind of fortify your own position. But Australia certainly has an opportunity within the kind of the coalition of the willing to do some great things globally, especially nearshore. We're talking Singapore, Indonesia, Malaysia, etc.
Well, I was going to ask about the regional and global focus. So who's doing this well? I know you've got a lot of international background as well, Ian. Are there any countries that we could look to and say, look, they've done similar type of investment in SME cybersecurity protection? Are there any things that's going on around the world, or could we be a leader in that?
You push the right buttons, I swear. Again, in my background, I've worked for the American flag quite a bit, Middle East, Central Asia, and a few other places. So yeah, really, those guys invest really well at the ground level in the startups. They kind of support it through all sorts of mechanisms of grants and procurement. So again, as you know, for startups in Australia, if government and others could be the buyer, the first buyer, and the market validation of, whether it's a cybersecurity product or service, then oftentimes the founder doesn't starve. And again, you've dealt with so many startups in your conversation, so you know this to be true, that if I've been validated and then I can employ somebody, I can, project some tech in through a pilot or a proof of concept, Australian kind of IP is critical here. And it's an arms race in that way. We really have to push Australian know-how and our folks big time.
Can I ask you, what's been the reception of the report, the findings? Have the government sort of given you any feedback, or industry groups given you feedback about your findings?
Yeah, no, a lot of people, actually cybersecurity companies, but also actual ABNs, so small and medium enterprises, kind of shocked. Again, and we do something in Western Australia called CyberCheckMe, which is deploying students into small businesses, and Tasmania, South Australia and New South Wales are looking to take that as a pilot. So yeah, some great feedback, and AUSTCYBER is obviously supporting it, so it's fantastic.
Yeah, I love the CyberCheckMe part that I read, and that was, it sounds like you were getting a lot of people at exhibitions and stands over in WA to really participate in that. And I think you had over 100 companies do follow-up inquiries around the CyberCheckMe list as well. What, now that we can't sort of, in WA you can do a bit more than we can over here in Victoria, but if you can't get to an exhibition, how are you sort of getting that message out with the CyberCheckMe around the place at the moment?
Yeah, and I guess, it started kind of as a kernel of an idea years ago. They did Edith Cowan University, Professor Craig Valley and myself, but really it's kind of, as you know, that the world has changed. So no, fantastic response from around the other states, and we're doing it actually digital, so online consultations. You fill out a survey, researchers look at it, then you deploy students online, where we used to do it face-to-face. So no, it can be, it's replicable, and it's fantastic.
So have you had engagement, or do you seek engagement with companies like Starboard to roll out or educate SMEs as well? So is that something that you guys are engaging with the AUSTCYBER?
Yeah, so I guess, again, with the West Australian cyber companies, we see it as kind of a continuation. So we're just kind of the proof point initially, but then the deeper skills of penetration testing and kind of setting up, IDSs and the rest of it, and more, even if it's right down to a security operations management opportunity, then we try to push work into the other companies in the ecosystem. So yeah, ICT companies with an expertise in cyber, and obviously it gets to the bigger end of town with the legacy companies with the bigger networks and bigger clients. But we're trying to kind of feed the supply chain of securitization of Australian trade, really.
Yeah, look, it's definitely the trade part, as we said, and as the report points out, it is really vulnerable to cyber attack. And even on the radio this morning, I heard that there was more discussion around China in regards to cyber attack, both in Iran and all this stuff. There was I think a CIA discussion that was taking place this morning on the radio on ABC. But there was, again, top of mind, a lot of relevant topics that you're discussing now, and it just demonstrates and emphasises how important this sort of investment. And the other thing is, the other really important part about your reporting was that it really is going to take government to lead the way. Industry itself, I can't turn to Starboard and his peers and say, look, Steve, can you set up a fund and try and help SMEs? The government has to take this first step and then bring the business with them, and then other companies will start to step in and help, right?
Yeah, and I'm dealing here with the fantastic Office of Digital Government and West Australian Police here for cybercrime, but also the ACS, the Australian Cybersecurity Centre, Joint Cybersecurity Centre. There are mechanisms in Australia to report crime, but as Steve was saying, notifiable breach now. There is legislation to say under Security of Critical Infrastructure Act and Privacy Act that we need to act, and we can't bury our heads if we're cyber attacked. It kind of gives us data as well to figure out who's attacking us, what the signatures are, what it looks like, and what loss of trade we have.
Is there any real chance of anyone getting caught?
Yeah, I guess unfortunately, under notifiable breach, you're supposed to kind of notify, but so many cyber crimes, the intangible of how much people have lost, and whether it's shame or whether they don't want to look vulnerable to their suppliers or customers. Yeah, a lot of it is definitely not reported. But the other thing we can say is that it's very difficult if it's multi-jurisdictional and it's very clever. Then it routes through so many servers around the world that it's like just a tin of spaghetti.
Yeah.
And then also we did something very quickly with some real estate agents. They were paying ransomware between $2,600 and $5,000 just because it's easier to get rid of the problem.
Really?
And get their servers unlocked and their email back and running. So yeah, it's out there, happening that quickly.
Wow. Well, that sort of leads me into my final question: is how prepared in your mind, and before COVID, after COVID, what's been the appetite for businesses to really start addressing this as a serious infrastructure problem for their business?
Yeah, well, I won't quote the press, but the Wake Up Australia call is certainly being felt loud and clear around business, especially as you guys have pointed out about remotely working and, just protecting your data and also transmitting it and understanding that it gets to the person that you're sending it to, etc., especially if it's a bank check. This is a massive explosion globally. We can play a key role, especially in our region and with the Five Eyes and others.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Ian, for joining us. We really look forward to having you on again, and it's all really a critical part, not just for domestic here business SMEs, but even more so with international trading companies, because as we said earlier, and I talked about with Steve, companies in the supply chain are dealing with very sensitive data. It's not just about a product, a box of widgets that come into a container. You're dealing with a lot of sensitive consumer data these days, because people want last mile fulfillment, deliveries. You need to know what time they're home, all these type of delivery instructions. That sensitive data is all around us, and people are really using that to leverage, as you say, that ransomware and other type of schemes. Thanks so much, Ian. Look forward to staying in touch, and all the best over there in WA. And hopefully we can fly out there sometime in the coming months again.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate it. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Ian.